Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. I'm Giovanni Gallo, your host, and I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for jumping in and joining us today. And hey, if you're a subscriber, wow, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. And see, that's what you get. If you subscribe to the Ethics Experts, that extra special welcome is for you. So hit that subscribe button, share it around, and get ready for a great show today. I'm very excited and honored to welcome Jamal Theodore to the show today. He's the chair of the Privacy and Data Security Working Group at NABCRUMP. Hey, Jamal, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you, Gio. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here as well.
So tell us where you're calling in from today.
Yeah, I'm coming from Maryland. So Laurel, Maryland, for those aware of the area and the DMV, as we call it, smack dab in the middle of Baltimore and Washington, D.C. along 295.
All right, right on 295. Yep. Awesome. Well, super glad to have you on the show. Appreciate you coming to share your story and share some of your perspective to our community of listeners. So what we like to start off on here, Ethics Experts, is about telling the personal story of experts in the ethics industry. So tell me a little bit about your career path and how you came to be in the place that you are today.
Sure. Thanks, Gio. So currently, I work full-time for a financial institution running what many people recognize as a red team program or purple team program, essentially doing adversary simulations against the firm in order to kind of shore us up and train us up and make us more resilient against the real hackers and cybersecurity threats out there. But what I'm really passionate about outside of work is a lot of volunteering and mentoring I do. So I come to you today really as like a representative of the Privacy and Data Security Working Group of the association that I volunteer at, called the National Association of Black Compliance and Risk Management Professionals, or for short, we call it NABCRUMP. And really what it's about is ensuring diversity and equity in the compliance and risk management fields, making sure that we can develop the next crop of professionals in the industry, and ensuring that really the industry understands like the impact that diversity and equity and inclusion could really have to really just improve firms overall. So in terms of my career path, I'm not a lawyer, came out with a bachelor's in computer science from what we call a historically Black college and university, Morgan State University in Baltimore. Kind of went to industry doing coding and data analysis, which to be honest, was kind of boring for me. It was kind of like rudimentary, run-of-the-mill type IT job, right? You think just in the cubicle doing stuff. Mm-hmm. So I went to go get a master's degree, but I said I want to do something different. I want to do something a little, different than coding or all that kind of stuff. So I say, what can I really do? So throughout my life, I tend to like putting myself in difficult situations where I'm not really prepared for. So I went ahead and got a master's degree at George Washington University in what was a new field at that time, early 2000s, called bioinformatics. Okay. So I'm an IT guy and basically signed myself up for like a course load of biochemistry, learning genetics, genomics, all that stuff with the idea that, hey, I'm going to combine this chemistry and biochemistry stuff and use my tech know-how to find like a way to kind of meld it together.
You went right after it, huh, Jamal?
Yep.
I love it.
So, I mean, long story short, as you just heard, I didn't end up going professionally into bioinformatics field, but a lot of the lessons I learned about kind of combining different skills and ways of thinking together really helped me throughout my path. So, but the key thing though, while I was in master's degree, I had a professor because I took an elective computer science course just to keep a foot into the technical space, and the guy was actually a CIA officer for the U.S. government.
Okay.
So I did well in his class. He liked me. I started talking to him. He said, hey, man, I told him, I'm just doing like, run-the-mill IT stuff. He said, hey, you should apply to the federal government. And I said, okay, cool. So I applied to all these different agencies. Of course, you're the DC area. That's not too hard. Tried the FBI test, to be a special agent. Never heard back from them. So I guess I didn't do too well. Applied to CIA, got a foot in the door, but didn't go too far. And then a year later after I applied, I actually went to the NSA. So going to the NSA is what really started me on my like cybersecurity and risk management career path. So that's where I learned like all those skills. From there, really not too much bioinformatics after that.
Right.
And then spent a few years in government, went to contracting, and then now I'm in the financial industry. doing red teaming and pen test work primarily day to day.
Cool, man. That's super interesting. I always love hearing those stories because, a lot of us follow this winding route through our career to wherever we are. And it's always a good perspective. What, you talked about running after challenges and stuff like that. What are some other things that have driven some of these different steps through your career to, help keep you sharp, keep you challenged, and, kind of keep you in something that, makes a real impact?
Yeah, so I'm a person that likes to stay in the know with like industry trends,
Mm-hmm.
new things going on, and to be honest, I get that from my father as well.
Okay.
So he's a big junkie of like 60 Minutes,
Okay.
new news stories, things of that nature. So he's always like, "Hey, you heard about this new thing, genetic this, splice this."
And you're like, yeah, Dad, I'm on it.
Yep, I'm on it, and then even with our industry, of course, now in the last few years, especially being, about cybersecurity, ransomware, all that stuff, a lot of stuff that is really blown up now, especially last year about ransomware
Mm-hmm.
and supply chain issues. And then, how to implement compliance programs and governance around that to protect organizations and also ensure ethics, of course. But some of that stuff I've kind of been introduced to years ago and just now seeing blown up. So it's always good to be, kind of like a little bit ahead of the curve, a little bit. And that way I can speak knowledgeable to the stakeholders in my organizations. But again, kind of being in, the intelligence industry or intelligence community initially where I started off, you kind of see at a government level, and also you get to observe other nation states how they handle risk,
Mm-hmm.
how compliance issues kind of affect them, how I've got to able to dab into like economic policy and effects of cybersecurity on that. So those are ways that really allow me to really understand like the effects of risk management of, in general cybersecurity for me for the most part, even compliance, how that really affects like real world issues.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the show, Gio. Listen to mostly through your podcast, so listen to a lot of your episodes.
Cool.
And you have people like Tom Fox here. You've had other folks just talk about the real effect of compliance.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the Debbie Downer, but really about
Yes.
How properly implemented risk management compliance really affects organizations, boosts stock prices.
Yep.
And then at the end, for me, really, especially now as a manager, I manage a sizable team now,
Yeah.
Affects morale.
Yes.
So allowing people to really do what they came to do in
Right.
a safe way. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's such a great perspective. And I think, I think a lot of people within compliance have felt that and known that for a long time. A lot of people in ethics say, hey, we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for everybody. And I think more and more kind of people outside of our spheres of influence are recognizing, hey, you know what? Things go better when we get this team involved.
Yep.
And I think it's cool how you have that perspective from NSA and the intelligence community and this international perspective, how, this stuff really flows through the entire system, right? The economic system, the political system, just, people and jobs and all of that. And, I think that comprehensive view is what's really driving this thing that, we call compliance 3.0 of, this is not just telling people no. This is not just, hey, let's keep the boss out of jail. We're trying to take care of all of this stuff, the actions that people take, the things that, our vendors or competitors or, people with malicious intent are doing. It's a way for us to kind of get our arms all around that. You have a really cool perspective on that because of, some of that international exposure that you've had and your time with NSA. But there's also an important element of that diversity of thought and that dynamism that is necessary within ethics that you and the team at NABCRUMP really are bringing, I think to the forefront. Like it's really cool to see you leading that conversation and leading, through mentorship and, helping bring these topics to the forefront, how this diversity is not just something that we should say because somebody needs us to post a number of, a head count, but it really actually makes us all stronger. Talk to me a little bit about how, that kind of interfaces with what you're doing at NABCRUMP.
Yeah. So, especially in cybersecurity where I come from, right? The big issue, and also just in general, again, I lead the privacy and data security working group.
Yeah.
So just in general, privacy and data security, jobs and professionally, there's going to be a big need for a new crop of workers in the next generation, right? So we need folks to really come up the ranks, especially here, in the U.S., to kind of fill those jobs, be equipped. And it's not the type of thing where you can kind of like not be involved, or organizations cannot be involved. You have to get involved early, provide mentorship, provide programs that can really train up folks from a young age, middle school, high school, to really be prepared to fill those ranks. And having diverse pool of candidates is crucial for that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we kind of keep to hey, let's get the people that normally will fill these jobs from certain social economic classes fill them. I think economic statistics show that there's going to be a gap there.
Yep.
So we need to bring people in, show there's additional career paths than what maybe a lot of folks who come from disadvantaged places or places where they're not exposed to things like the compliance or risk management industries, STEM, of course, and other things. We need that backfill.
Yeah.
So for NABCRUMP, especially the privacy and data security industry, we're approaching it different ways. So number one, we're looking to engage folks over social media.
Okay.
So for example, we're soon going to stand up discussions and kind of like town halls in places like Clubhouse app. You also have Twitter, which has similar technology now. So we're looking to engage that. We're looking to start up mentorship programs where we can engage, like I said, people like where I came from historically Black colleges and universities. And also we're looking to engage allies too. So I know we're called NABCRUMP, and we always, I've been a part of different organizations with target, certain minority or disadvantaged groups. But none of these groups are just for the people whose name is in the title, right?
Right, exactly.
We're looking for
it's
allies.
the mission.
We're looking for you're right.
Yeah.
We're looking for folks to get involved, to be, to actively help out and submit ideas, lead in positions, and really, just bring other folks up, right? And I think that should be actually. I think that overall we've seen that allyship is so important via the recent like Black Lives Matter movement over the last year, the Stop Asian Hate movement over the last few months. And to be honest, at least in the U.S., I'm sure there's going to be other issues that crop up, right?
Yeah, plenty of work to do.
So plenty of work to do. A lot of allyship needed. Yep. So we're looking from at least from my working group from those three standpoints to kind of get started.
That's cool, man. I'm glad that you're doing that, and I love that focus on the pipeline, right? You can kind of promote and amplify the voices of people who are in industry, people like you who are already doing it. But we talked about your path here. You got an undergrad degree, you learn computer science, you got a master's degree, right? There's been a long path to get to the place where you can make this impact, and if you don't start early with some people, it can be kind of hard to do it, right? Like I'm the son of a Cuban refugee, and when I was growing up, it was just like, hey, just work hard. I don't really kind of know what else. You don't know how to navigate the school system, apply to college, and all that kind of stuff. So we had to just kind of figure that stuff out. And you kind of make it to the next lily pad, and you're like, all right, where do we go next? And you and NABCRUMP and that focus on that mentorship and bringing people up can say, hey, there's a path here where you can do this kind of stuff and you can end up in this position of influence and helping people and making a positive impact. And I just love that focus. It's some stuff I do in my own volunteering of like, there are young people who can be transforming not just this conversation, but the dynamic of our workplace and how we can be successful as a diverse community in the workplace. But you gotta kind of start a few years ahead. You can't just do it with a job post and say, we're you can't just say we're an equal opportunity employer and then you get everything you need.
Oh yeah, no, I've run into that a few times, right? Where HR wants to hit their diversity numbers for hiring, but they don't really provide too much support there. And kind of rely on you, especially for me as an African American person doing hiring at certain times. They say, well, leverage your network. You know people, right? I was like, I don't think that's the only way it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah.
So you got to start early.
And like if you have the network, it's cool, right? Like,
right.
if you got an uncle who, has been doing cybersecurity for 20 years and, you got an aunt who can tell you, hey, you got to do this, you got to get this major and then do this thing if you want this job, that's great. But a lot of people who we want to welcome into this profession, they don't have that path laid out for them. And I
Yeah.
know when I was growing up, I had to just kind of figure it out. You know, my parents were just like, go to college. There's probably some people there who know something and they can kind of help you figure this out. And
Yep.
they, you know, they gave me a lot of great values and, you know, raised me with a lot of great things that I
Yep.
stand on every day. But, you know, there was a bunch of stuff they didn't know. And I think that you and the team at NAPCRUMP and people who really care about this, focusing on, you know, kind of that lead time can start to change the direction of this over time.
Yeah, you hit on it, man. The story I told earlier about how my father stays connected and
Yep.
all the newest developments. I mean, he's an immigrant as well.
Okay.
So he kind of same type of thing, you know. He kind of growing up, it was very much traditional paths, even doing like what he was doing, you know, type of thing. You know, hey, my son will follow my path, and
Yep.
he was end up being an entrepreneur. But you know, I landed to computers myself.
Yep.
But of course, you know, you don't have to be a computer guy. You don't have to be a lawyer to get into the compliance risk management field. And we have a lot of folks in my working group who are very passionate about that. They say, hey, I want to go back to my old neighborhoods. And they do, you know,
Cool.
already. But NAPCRO gives them that structure. But they say, I want to go back and pull people and say, hey, there's other things you can study in college. Because I know plenty of people who go to college. They know they need to go to college.
Yep.
They know statistics about earning more in college. But
And
is the major they signed up for really what they want to do? They don't know yet.
Yep.
They don't even know the options. People think the jobs are with the title of the discipline or with the program they are in, right?
Right.
Like, what else can you do, you know? So that's what I love so much about compliance and risk management for us.
Yeah, and it's cool because, you know, you can start one place and it gives you a skill set, a tool to put in your toolbox, but, you know, there are a bunch of other ways that you can make an impact and places that you can end up. And, you know, your stories like that, there are a bunch of people who have been on here who they started in nursing or they started in accounting or they, you know, they were an hourly job and became a manager and found a passion for this. And, you know, I think that you know, that route of, you know, people have really long careers these days, right? Like, you know, people aren't retiring at 40 and dying at 55, like working till they're 70 sometimes. So that's a long time to kind of like make another jump, especially over this period of time, you know, call it the last century. The amount of time that people on average stay at a company has like massively shrunken, right? Like it used to be like you're at a company for 30, 40 years, stamp your pension and go retire. Maybe you get a watch or something. Now it's like you're maybe there for 30 months and maybe less.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. You know, I think the longest place I've stayed is like 4.5, maybe 5 years. So for the most part, like 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
You know, there's no indication of my current employer me leaving or anything. I like where I'm at.
Just so you know.
But yeah, just so you know. But yeah, I mean, that's true, man. There's so much stuff you can do. I work with brilliant people today and even previously who come from like teaching jobs or other things which are totally not related to like security or information technology. Even folks I went to school with that, you know, did a computer science degree coming out, they realized I don't like programming.
Right.
So what else can I do, right?
Yeah.
So some of them have gone into like program management.
Yep.
They've gone into, you know, positions, especially now my age, they're at the stature where they can influence and make executive decisions and things like that, of that nature. So they're not hands-on tech.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think part of this, especially with diversity, is about not scaring folks off, right?
Yeah.
Because they do come with that. Sometimes a lot of folks do come with that stigma, like, hey, I don't know, you know, any computer science guys. The only thing I use computer for was like social media. But, you know, people have those gifts, right? They just have to be, it just has to be brought out of them. And, you know, a lot of folks want to kind of like be able to utilize their creativity.
Yep.
And, you know, you can, you know, compliance and risk management, a lot of that is about persuasion, right?
Yes.
And, you know, that goes back to, I think, another episode you had before we get.
We're big on that.
Like, you know, one of the big skills you can have is about writing, persuasion, telling a story, talking to different people, being a people person, and really showing the benefit of the compliance industry and implementing safeguards for privacy and data security overall, specifically for me, and how that, you know, benefits everybody from board down to the workers, the morale of the workers. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's, you know, such a big piece. It's almost like when you're entry level, you have a smaller skill set that you need, right? If you're an entry level, you know, data scientist or programmer, you're just writing code. But as you move up, you need more of that creativity and that persuasion. And, you know, it's hard to find somewhere where you need more of that than in compliance and ethics where, you know, these threats might come from anywhere. Like
Yeah.
any
Oh,
employee might cause a risk. Like, we need, collaboration and cooperation from every division. And, what's cool is if you've built some skill sets, right? Maybe you move to a few different jobs within a company, or you move across a few different companies. Well, I have some technical skills, and I have some organizational skills, and I have some influence skills. Well, as you get more senior, then you can use that to make that big impact, because you can't just be one dimensional when you're, mid-level or above. And
Yeah.
to your point, like, if you have that creativity, if you have that persuasion, we need you in compliance and ethics to make the case, to build the coalition or whatever you need to get something done, and to move it forward. And you don't need to have a really deep legal background and know all the regulations. If you're on a team of 40 compliance professionals, or you're on a team of 3 and you have some advisors or something, you don't need kind of that entry level skill. You need these, really leadership skills of creativity, working with people, driving persuasion, and communicating what, you're really going after.
Yeah. And one of the things too, related to that, is that there's so, compliance and risk management is not there's so many different industries and different ways that you can kind of be engaged with that and find jobs in it, right?
Yes.
So, you have the finance industry, energy industry,
Mm-hmm.
but also you have, well, there's many industries. So if you go to the NAVCOM website and just look at like a different like industry.
Yeah, go into tech or telecom or healthcare or whatever.
Yeah, healthcare. You'll see a whole range of industries that could utilize compliance and risk management, and utilize all types of backgrounds and understandings and perspectives, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to do there. So even for me, because I was kind of for most of my career, you talked about kind of coming up.
Yeah.
I was kind of like low to the ground, sitting in the corner, cybersecurity guy, right? Doing, for folks aware like pen testing or scripting or programming. But the more, I kind of got exposure to higher levels of executive management and decision making and all that kind of stuff. You really get more of a view of really what like cybersecurity and privacy affects in my case.
Yeah.
So that's when you really say, okay, like it really touches, and going back to earlier, the economics of this, the politics of this, this industry. You deal with energy industry, finance industry, healthcare, and notice the the commonalities between it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just a fascinating industry for me. I love being in cybersecurity. Love dealing with privacy and data security. And I talked a lot so far just about organizations.
Yeah.
Specifically privacy and data security. Even our working group. We're not just focused on like organizations, but even just personally, right?
Okay.
Privacy and data security is a big thing there too, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody has like smart toasters, smart fridges, getting all types of updates with cameras on them and audio equipment on them, audio recording and microphones on them.
Which means lots of vulnerability.
Yep, lots of vulnerability. So, so that's one thing that really fascinates me too, right?
Yeah.
I have an Alexa in front of me too, right?
Hi, Alexa.
Yep. Right. I changed the word just in case.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, there's a lot of different cool things that we can go with this type of work.
Yeah, it's so cool, and it's becoming so ubiquitous, right? It's all over the place.
Yeah.
It used to be just maybe high tech, high risk companies needed to care about cybersecurity, and now every company's got Wi-Fi enabled printers, and people bring in BYOD, bring your device to work or own device, and then it's happened at at the personal level. So there's a bunch of stuff to look at there. Talk to me a little bit about what's exciting for you right now in in your space. If you want to talk about what you're doing on the red team, or what stuff is maybe not in your job right now, but you think is just like, hey, here's what people are going to be talking about in 3 months or a year in cyber.
Yeah. So of course, when it comes to corporate space, industry space, definitely ransomware, of course, is a big thing for this year. It's been around for a long time, but it's definitely hitting people now. Trying to understand, trying to really watch a lot of organizations, decisions they make. And, some of that will be regulatory and push from the government about, do we make a payment? Do we not? How long do we wait? How long do we negotiate? To me, that's really fascinating questions, right? With no easy answer, depending on the number one, or what was hit, what assets are actually under siege. of that company, but also, the nature of that company too.
Yeah.
Supply chain is a big thing that
Okay.
I'm watching as well, especially from the compliance space. Because one thing to say, okay, we can control ethics and compliance and risk to some degree in our own company.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we impose that on the third-party vendors and suppliers
Yes.
that engage with us? Because that stuff will affect you too. So to be honest, I'm interested in a lot of the. I'm seeing a lot of startups, a lot of companies being spun up recently, focus on that third-party supplier risk, saying, hey, we'll kind of help be the liaison with compliance and risk assessment with those third parties before they sign on to you. So that's a very interesting space.
Yeah.
Otherwise, going more personal, still just IoT, right?
Okay.
To me. So lots of IoT, lots of vulnerabilities. And one of the things people don't realize about IoT, especially both personal and even going, because we bring a lot of IoT stuff to the company too, to workplace.
Yep.
Is that a lot of these IoT gadgets, as new as they are, they're running software which is like 20, 25 years old underneath,
Yes.
right?
Right.
With vulnerabilities that people really didn't do a good job doing QA on them, doing cybersecurity assessment on them.
Yep.
So a lot of these things are cropping up decades after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, a lot of the software is shared amongst a lot of different IoT devices across vendors, across models. So if a bad guy finds a vulnerability, and I won't name any vendors, but finds vulnerability in one model, one vendor, there's a good chance that same vulnerability in some way affects all these other vendors, let's say out of South Korea or out of China or out of some regional area where it's developed. So that's one space that like recently I've been kind of looking into, especially from my day-to-day job as a pen tester and red teamer doing adversary emulation simulations.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, a couple things you talked about have just kind of hit on the like massive ballooning of, nodes of points of entry or places that can get penetrated, right? Like when you go from, I got to manage in the four walls of my company and make sure we're secure to, I need to worry about, the 4,000 walls across all these different vendors outside of me. It's just such a bigger mountain of work. And then, IoT, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago where like the BYOD thing started, right? Like it was like around, 2008, 2010, everyone had BlackBerries and it was like, maybe you could do this other thing. And like, it seems like so long ago, but it's not that long. And now people are walking in with a smartwatch and they got, the step tracker and something else. And there are just so many more things to manage, which I think just speaks to why we need professionals like you in cyber, in pen test, and red team. We need people, in the ethics space to really step up our game because, whatever GDP grows, whatever 2 to 5% a year, depending on what country you're in on average or something, right? And then, your company might be growing 10 to 30% a year. Well, like risks are growing 50 to 300% a year, right? Like how much you have to manage is growing so much. And the thing is, Jamal, the budgets are not growing that fast. So what are you going to do about it? We got to get sharper. We got to get better. We got to invest in ourselves. We got to join communities like NabCrump and get networks of people who can help get us sharper because the size of the threat or the risk or just the amount of work to manage is growing faster than, we're ready to handle it if we don't retool, get better software, get better vendors, get, a better network of people who can help us do it.
Yeah, and really just put in those frameworks, those policies, those processes. And really, that's one thing that I've been focused on professionally now from a management perspective now that I've really been happy about with the teams I work for.
Yeah.
One thing that really excites me is when we've done the prep work ahead of time before a fire erupts or emergency happens, that we have those processes or structures in place about managing risk, about documentation, about being, preparing for audits and things of that nature. So when something does pop up unannounced, we're ready, right? And that's always a good feeling.
Yeah.
Going back to the, BYOD issue that you brought up, or the environment that we're in. One of the things also that kind of I've seen a lot of chatter about recently with all this, with 2020. COVID, working from home, is I think there's going to be some type of discussion that's going to happen soon about the amount of control that companies have over the personal data, the use of personal devices
Yep.
by the employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of interested also in kind of like where that will go, because people are using their own computers, their own phones to do normal business.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, some of them subscribe to it right away, but I haven't seen too many people that like to say, yes, I subscribe to my company being able to, log into my personal device anytime to
Right.
ensure that, I'm not violating any type of cybersecurity policy or data policy. But
yeah, go ahead and remote into my phone and check on it anytime.
Yep. Yeah. Or at any time they can confiscate it and do whatever with it, That's those some hard questions that are going to have to be answered over the next couple of years. Because I think this remote environment is not going anywhere, right? We'll trickle back into the office to some degree. I know there's different debates about it, but things like Zoom sessions, go to meeting, whatever, all this stuff is going to be sticking around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's so complex, right? Because do you have a work phone and a personal phone? Is
right.
it all on that one device, and your company wraps around the whole thing? Is it just on an app-based level of when you open your email app, well then we're tight on that and we encrypt that or whatever, but we don't know, when you click a link and go to your browser, we don't have it. So there are all those layers. And then just such a wide range of, devices and formats and software that people use. I think that concept you brought up of the intermingling of really code bases and, apps and services across a bunch of different things is, I don't think a lot of leaders, I think you and people in your industry probably are, but I think that probably a lot of like business leaders and maybe even compliance leaders don't fully conceive of how intermingled this stuff is. That the processor chip on this whatever Samsung device is the same on this Google device, and a vulnerability here can be copied there, or well, hey, everyone didn't develop their own service for managing this piece of email. They just borrowed this code, and you know what? You said like it's happened over 10 years. Well, we talked earlier about how quickly things turn over, right? People have a, 6 to 18 month average tenure at companies. Well, it's not like every time you bring someone in, they audit the whole code base and they're like, I know everything that's going on in this whole thing. And I know this thing's a little bit weird, but we'll get to it later. It's just like, here you go. Any problems? I don't know. I'll let you know if it comes up.
Oh, yeah. I talked to a colleague of mine recently who started a new programming job. And, they said they admitted, very much that they kind of build upon what they already was there.
Yeah.
They just make tweaks and they have deadlines and, all that, just like anybody else, right? So they don't have the time, even if they want to. It goes from scratch and kind of like, assess it. So,
yeah. And, it's a whole library of code. So, like, you're the new librarian, and you're just checking in the new books that come in and out. You're not like, all right, I'm going to make sure that I just walk up and down these rows and know every book that's in here, because there's a ton of stuff that's there. And, I mean, the other piece of that is, people come in and they're the new steward of this code base. You don't know what errors someone else was like, hey, I got to just do this quickly because I got a deadline. And, I'm sure someone will check it later, or, we'll go do this. And you don't rewrite the whole base. You're just like, all right, better, faster, maybe a little bit more quality, but just do some more stuff.
I mean, like I said, Gio, that keeps me employed. So, I'm not too mad at it,
Exactly, man.
It's like a dentist with people with no cavities. You want a little bit of cavity. You want some
exactly. If not, you got to hand out a little candy around the neighborhood. So, listen. I know about pen testing. I try to stay up on cybersecurity. We have really high standards here at our company for our security standards, and we manage data for millions of employees, so we're really high on that. But I have not been part of like a red team simulation. So tell me a little bit about that. Like you playing war games, and kind of do you set up teams, or you set up a scenario and some people don't know about it? Like we do simulations of a breach and what we do as a follow-up, but I imagine you're like 1,000 times deeper into like some crazier stuff that's going on. Can we talk about any of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So one thing I want to introduce that's kind of like actually a new thing that's kind of taken over the industry is for those who are not aware, when we talk about these colors, we kind of talk about a blue team,
Mm-hmm.
which are the defenders. So the SOC, the incident response,
Mm-hmm.
or security operations center, incident response, threat hunters, threat intelligence. And then traditionally, you also had the red team,
Mm-hmm.
which Gio mentioned, which is primarily kind of what I'm involved in, where you have folks that actually take the role of real life hackers trying to hack into your organization,
Mm-hmm.
being creative, using all the resources they have, and going after the things that matter in your organization, and seeing how the blue team, the defenders, react to that, and then of course improve. The overall goal is to improve the organization. However, Gio, I want to bring to folks' attention. The trend now is actually going towards something called a purple team, which I'm really excited about. And even the teams I'm doing are doing a lot of what we call purple teaming, where we sit side by side with the blue team, the defenders, and you get the adversaries or the folks who do the pen test side by side, and you break down that adversarial kind of like relationship that has traditionally existed.
Okay.
So the idea is that you do a live fire exercise. So you try to hack into the organization, but you actually show the blue team what they're doing, what you're doing. They make the changes on the fly or in phases that do improvements to the organization right then and there.
Okay.
And then the red team kind of retest and say, hey, did this work? Did this control detect, prevent, or were you able to respond in the way that you expected? If not, then make a change. Let's do it again. The idea is that almost in an agile method, you're making the changes, you're doing the testing, and you're not just having a pen tester or red teamer come in, do stuff for 8 weeks, and then kick over a 200-page report and say, hey, you got all these issues, you suck, and pay us again to come back months later, retest you, right? You can actually have both teams in the same room or virtually now, the same room, doing iterative testing and working together and making those changes to improve the organization. And that's really what I think. It takes a lot more planning, a lot more organization, a lot more stakeholder buy-in. But I think the results are a lot more rapid. It's a lot more efficient. And I think it's just a better quality of results. And also, again, like I said before, it goes down to morale. You don't have blue teamers feeling like they failed, like they have, things being pointed at, the insecurities being pointed at them. Mm-hmm. They're right there with the red teamers working hand in hand. So purple teaming, I think, is really the way to go when it comes to the future of pen testing, red teaming, and other cybersecurity assessments.
That's cool. Thanks so much for walking us through that. It's really interesting, and I love that purple team dynamic, and I think that there's something that all ethics experts can learn from that, because in that collaboration, it's not just adversarial. I imagine you still do kind of red team, blue team on some things, but maybe afterward you get together and you say, hey, here was our playbook. Here's what we were looking for. Here's what we knew that you maybe didn't know that, we had figured out. And then they can be, and instead of just, I also imagine that a 200-page report doesn't get completely acted on and fixed over the next year. It's just the morale is just like, they got us. All right, well, let's go take a break. Like, that sucks.
Exactly.
But that collaboration, go ahead.
You don't have a report going straight to like the the executives, or the CISO, or the CEO, or CTO. You have the time for the blue team to actually work on stuff and try to make some improvements.
Right.
And they can go with you to say, hey, these are deficiencies. We made some changes, we made some updates, but this is where we're at. And, this is the next steps forward. And we're in sync about that ahead of time before you got the big report. So,
yeah, that's great. And I think that a lot of us could relate to how nice that would be, if you're rolling out just a compliance program, outside of cybersecurity, and you know what, like, these employees are going to hate it. Well, what if I sat with the manufacturing lead, or sat with the guy who runs the engineering team and said, hey, what if I launched this to your team? What would you think? Right? Like, that's kind of purple teaming. Like, we're not necessarily adversarial, but listen, I mean, the truth is a bunch of, the average employee sees compliance as, until we change this narrative, as messing with, what they're trying to do. So we could purple team it a little bit, and we can say, hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think about that? Oh, that's not going to land. Okay, let me kind of rework it a little bit. What if I rolled it out this way? Just that concept of purple teaming is, I think that with the idea of being agile, right? And we're going to like try this, and then we're going to tweak it, and then we're going to take the next step, and then we're going to reevaluate. Those are the things that I think the ethics leader of the next decade is going to excel at, of not just like, hey, we spent a year and a half writing a policy and we're going to just, throw this book at everybody. But, we we kind of battle tested it and we put it on the road and we figured out how it worked and then we tweaked it. And by the time you actually launch it, kind of to get back to your analogy, but by the time you kind of finish the exercise and deliver the report, well, it's a lot better than, just like it's the best that we could do kind of sitting in the corner.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I said, and that's why for us at NABCRUMP, when we're kind of talking about the compliance and risk management profession, we're telling folks like, hey, the skill set here is creativity, is being able to be a people, be a people person, persuasiveness, in terms of skill set, just being able to write, things of that nature, right? So and just to really work with people, and I think there's a lot of folks, regardless of the background, that really can have that skill set and really contribute there.
Yeah,
it's not hard technical skills, or you have to come from a family of lawyers or have lawyers in the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff, right? So
yeah, right.
It's some really ground stuff that you can do.
Yeah, and that stuff that you brought up, we all can get good at that, right? Like some people, they're just not great at, I don't know, doing a bunch of math in their head, or they don't have like that lawyer personality or whatever, but we all can be creative. We all can connect with people. We can learn how to be persuasive. We can learn how to write and communicate. Those are things that like you're going to have a different style of how you do it.
Oh, yeah.
And, they're like, that's where that diversity comes into play of like, okay, I got someone who can really speak across the table to these people, on the front lines, or these people, who have a technical background or whatever it is. But those are things that we can all do. And I think that as ethics leaders lean into that skill set, we're going to see getting traction across the organization, building the alliances and, the buy-in that we need to move this forward, whether it's on, hey, we need to invest in cyber and we're not going to wait until we get blasted with this massive fine or this massive vulnerability to actually do it, to what you were saying earlier, we're going to do it before it happens because we're going to be ready for the fire when the fire comes up because it's not if or when, right? It's not if, it's when. So we're going to get ready for it and we're not going to kind of wait and then, be in crisis mode trying to recover from it.
Yeah, or even just to know that the issue exists, right? Because sometimes just knowing that the issue was there, even if you weren't able to fix it, can help with like audits and other regulatory assessments, right?
Yeah.
So just being able to say, no, we knew about this, and we're working on it. We have a plan for it, even if it's not totally fixed, helps a lot. So, yeah, that's the way to go.
Cool, man. Well, listen, this has been really fun. As we head toward wrapping up, I'll ask you if you have any final thoughts, but, I'd love if you could give our audience some sense of how we can support you and your work team and NABCRUMP in what you're doing, like what can we keep an eye out to support the work that you're all doing? Because I think we all want to see better representation and, better success for the Black community in the compliance profession.
Absolutely. So please visit the website, the National Association for Black Compliance and Risk Management Professionals, which is nabcrump.org. We actually have our first virtual summit coming up October 6th through 8th. So please visit the website, sign up, come check out all the awesome presentations, vendor booths, and also join the different organization work groups and committees that are there. It covers, there's a place for you. We started in 2019, but in the last year is when we really started spinning up and really putting into place a lot of initiatives. So there's a lot for folks to do. Also, just getting involved with this type of thing is a chance for you to kind of show leadership skills, even if you're not a leadership skill in a leadership position in your full-time job. So you can really get out there, show leadership skills, build a network, give back, mentor, and really just promote this great industry and career path.
That's
so
awesome.
Thank you, Gia, for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, it's been great hosting you, man. It's been a great discussion. Please check out nabcrump.org. Please support the work that they're doing. You can be an ally. You can help. You can, tell people about their events. You can, reshare the posts that they share on LinkedIn and stuff like that and participate in what they're doing because it's great work and we can all be part of making making the world a better workplace and making this profession more welcoming place for, Black and brown people to succeed in. So thanks for joining me today. Anything else you want to leave us with, man?
No, just thanks for having me. Wonderful podcasts and series that you have here.
Thank you.
And definitely a benefit to the industry. So thank you.
Great. Well, it's been an honor to have you on the show, and everyone who has joined us on the podcast. Thanks for listening. I hope this was something that contributed to making you a better ethics expert, and something that helped you think of some new things that you can work on, focus on, and people you can connect with. Go out there, be a great ethics expert, and we'll see you next time.